Hello everybody, welcome back to lesson 2 of the IELTS Basic Speaking course with me, your host, and your teacher George from England. Hi everybody, nice to see you again. So, lesson 2. We're going to cover something different this time. Last time, in lesson 1, we looked at adjectives. This time we're going to look at some other areas of vocab, this time verbs, and some really tricky, annoying but tricky verbs that are really, really useful that you kind of need to know, to be honest, to express yourself and sound really natural in your IELTS speaking exam, and hopefully bump up and boost your lexical resource score in the IELTS speaking, okay? Today specifically, we're going to be talking a lot first about phrasal verbs. Okay, phrasal verbs, these multi-word verbs. They're really tricky. I'll explain exactly what I mean by phrasal verbs if you're not sure in a moment, and then we'll see lots and lots of examples of how to use them in sentences and what they mean, okay, and how to pronounce them and all that. And also connected to that, but slightly differently, collocations. So ways that words go together are collocations, so common pairs of words that we find together or we say together, and how to use them in a sentence, and again, sounding more natural. So these are like patterns. Phrasal verbs, yeah, the way we use them, and collocations are patterns, common things that native speakers do sort of naturally, and they sound very conversational, chatty, and it's going to be a great way, especially when you're talking about personal things in part 1, part 2 of the IELTS speaking test. It's going to make you sound really personal and just a bit more relaxed, because sometimes I think our speech can come across a bit too formal if we use single word verbs at times. So let's talk about this in some detail, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean by all of this. Yes, so basically boosting that lexical resource score by using idiomatic and natural language. Okay, not just stuff you might have seen in a textbook, but things people actually say and the way that we naturally speak, okay, to make us sound a bit more relaxed sometimes. So, as I was saying, phrasal verbs, or also known as multi-word verbs, multiple word verbs. So single word verbs, right, these are the basic ones that we learn immediately, and we can all use them and change them and use them in the correct way, I think. Go, come, do, eat, sleep, whatever, walk, read, everything. All those simple single word verbs that you just know as verbs on their own. Subject, verb, object, okay? But as you're aware, there are some verbs and some constructions that don't quite follow this. They have extra words in there. If you see it in a sentence, it might be really hard to grasp what is the meaning of this verb or what's the verb doing, because it's a multi-word verb. So it's not all together as one word. There's a space or even words between the words of the verb. But if we analyze the sentence, we can see that, oh, there's a phrasal verb here with a specific meaning. And we're going to practice some of those today. Some of these are very familiar to you and you know them already, I think. Some of them are maybe a bit new, and I'll go over them carefully, okay? So let's look at a bunch of these examples, and as we go through, like in lesson 1, I'm going to give you the chance to practice saying some of these sentences. So, here's what I mean by multi-word verbs versus single word verbs. Often, the single word verb has a phrasal verb equivalent, so more or less the same meaning. But the single word verb, okay, single word, multi-word. The single word verb sounds a bit more formal, sometimes too formal. Okay, it sounds like you're someone from the government, or you're a teacher, or someone official, and you're giving very official instructions, perhaps. In a conversation, though, it's often much more natural and common to use the phrasal verb instead. So, for example, here we have extinguish and put out. First example, extinguish and put out. So extinguish a fire, for example, usually a fire. So there's a fire and you want to put water on the fire, or cover the fire to stop the fire. Okay, like a candle, little flame, little fire, and we stop the fire. Or barbecue, we stop it. Extinguish. So that's kind of a fancy word. Sounds quite formal if you say, I extinguished the fire. Sounds like quite serious. But if you say, I put out the fire, it sounds a bit more just casual, not so intense, and it's a very casual thing to say. The firefighters came to the house and they put out the fire, for example. Okay, extinguish sounds a bit too formal. Similarly, with proceed, go ahead. So proceed, So continue, keep doing something. Yeah, sounds a bit formal. Again, you would see that in some official instructions, proceed with caution. You know, it sounds very formal and kind of direct, a bit scary. But go ahead, much more casual. So you say, I went ahead with the project. We continued with the project. We went ahead with the project. Or go ahead with the project, please. I support you. Sounds much more casual, every day. Continue and carry on. Another good example. Continue is fine. Continue is not too formal, but it's very common to say carry on instead. Let's carry on with the lesson. Let's continue the lesson. Okay, carry on, totally fine. Very casual and conversational as a phrasal verb. Carry on with something, for example. Discover and find out. Okay, so we use this one a lot. Find out, you've probably heard this before. I found out, or I figured out, but I found out all about German history yesterday. So I learned lots of facts about it. I found out a lot of things. So it's a bit more casual. Discover sounds a bit grander. It sounds like a big discovery or something in a history book that you discovered. But find out is a bit more casual. Okay, I found out some information. I learned something. Okay, let's find out and discover. And last one. So this sounds really formal. If we say tolerate, that sounds really formal. Okay, tolerating someone or a situation, like you're dealing with it, you're handling it. Okay, it's okay, it's not great, it's not perfect, but you're handling it. That's tolerate. Sounds quite formal and scary. But put up with, or deal with, as I said, deal with, or put up with. These phrasal verbs are much more casual. Just, okay, putting up with something, dealing with it. You know, it's not a huge problem, but you're coping with it. So in all these cases, the single word verb here, it makes it sound more serious. The situation sound heavy and serious when perhaps what you're describing is not a heavy or serious situation. In that case, I think the phrasal verbs are much better. The single word verbs, perhaps you would use these more in part 3 of the IELTS speaking, which we'll talk about in a different lesson, if you're sounding a bit more formal or describing more official things. But certainly with personal stories, you're probably going to be naturally wanting to use phrasal verbs more often, I would say. Okay, let's go through some more examples and some descriptions and how we use them in sentences, because they're tricky to phrase. So the first example here, like extinguish, put out. So with these phrasal verbs, the extra level of difficulty that can hide them in a sentence often or confuse them is the fact that the object of the verb, in this case and some other cases, can move. So in this case, the object can be here or here. So the object can go between the verb and the particle, which is this word, or here. So we can have the object, it can move. And it doesn't change the meaning particularly. Obviously, if we do it like this, it's probably an easier way for you to make a sentence because the verb is together. Put out the fire. Okay, but many native speakers, many speakers will put the object with this verb in the middle, put the fire out, put the candle out. That's a very common thing to do. Some verbs are like this, some are not. I'm going to mark on each verb that we see where the object can go. Some of them it moves, some it doesn't move. Okay, and just before we go on as well, as I said, put, in this case, is the verb, the meaningful verb. Out is the particle. It's a preposition, but in this case we call them in grammar particles. So it's the extra helping grammatical word, okay, that forms this phrasal verb, put out, with this specific meaning. Okay, of putting out a fire, for example, or a candle. Okay, so let's keep going and see what we've got. So here's another example. Candles, okay. So my example, make sure you put out the candles before you go to bed. Make sure you put out the candles before you go to bed. Right, you don't want a fire or an accident overnight. It's very dangerous, so you want to be awake while the candles are going and put them out before you go to sleep, for example. So something you might say just to someone, I put out the candles before I went to bed, or I forgot to put out the candles, okay? So we wouldn't want to say extinguish. It sounds very formal and strange here. So let's look at some other examples. So eating out. Okay, this one often gets mistakenly said as eat outside. Eating outside is just being not in a building. So in a park or on the street, that's eating outside, right? Like a picnic. But eat out is the phrasal verb we use for not eating at home, but probably eating inside a restaurant, an establishment, a fast food place, whatever, cafe, etc. So in this one, the object of the verb, would be always here, okay? That's O for object, always would go here, okay? I'll do like a little arrow. End up, this is a really good one. Can describe your kind of feeling about something, so end up plus the verb with the ing. So like end up going, ended up coming, etc. Reaching a particular place or achieving a certain situation or goal after some other activities. So it's kind of like a final result. So you're describing a final result that happened with end up. And we'll see an example with this. End up, blah. So the object for this one, I believe, it would always go after. So we ended up doing something, we ended up here. Let's look at some examples. So, first one, I hate cooking, so I always eat out at local restaurants. I hate cooking, so I always eat out at local restaurants. So we don't need this, it gives extra information, but you can just say, I eat out. Okay, and in context, it's pretty clear you mean, okay, eating at restaurants, cafes, etc., convenience stores, but not at home. Okay. And ended up. So this one we do need the object, we need more information, because end up on its own doesn't really tell us anything. So example here, the drive, maybe over Chuseok or Seoul, the drive from Seoul to Daejeon ended up taking 4 hours, too long, because of the traffic and bad weather. So the drive from Seoul to Daejeon, usually much shorter than that, I think. Okay, so ended up like, it's often different from the result we wanted or expected or hoped for. It ended up taking 4 hours, but we hoped it would be less. And remember, after end up, the pattern is, I think, always an ing verb. So these are all really useful, right? Describing journeys, habits, everyday things. I hate cooking, so I always eat out at local restaurants. The drive from Seoul to Daejeon ended up taking 4 hours because of the bad weather and the traffic and the bad weather. Figure out. So this one is an example. First of all, I'll just say the object can go in here or after, okay? So figure out the problem or figure the problem out, the issue out. So solving a problem or discovering an answer. Okay, figuring something out like, again, a result, kind of finally understanding something after some struggle. And look forward to. Object of this one, always, I think, after, okay? I think always gonna go after. Looking forward to something or doing something. So feeling pleasure, being happy, because some positive event or activity is going to happen in the future. So I'm looking forward to my vacation. Tomorrow I'm looking forward to going to the cinema tonight, something in the future that you feel positive about. So very, very useful verb to use. So not just 2 words, but this one has 3. And let's do our examples. I can't figure out how to solve these math equations. I can't figure out how to solve these math equations. We could reorder the sentence. Also, I can't figure these math equations out. Okay, I can't figure them out. You could also have. And Freddie and Amira are looking forward to their wedding in September. They've been planning it for 2 years. Okay, so longer term thing. They've been planning it for a long time. And now they're really excited about it. They're looking forward to it. They want to get married. They're really excited. I can't figure out how to solve these math equations. Freddie and Amira are looking forward to their wedding in September. So we had look forward to, and now we have look back on. So looking forward into the future and looking back positively to the past, neutrally or positively to the past. So looking back on a time or a thing, feeling pleasure, feeling happy when you remember things that happened in the past. We have the verb, and then we have particle 1, particle 2, like look forward to, okay? So for example, when I look back on my university days, I always smile. This is true. So when I look back on some past period, it makes me feel happy. I look back on my childhood with happiness. Okay, I look back on it with joy, happy memories. When I look back on my university days, I always smile. Okay, in addition, similar to phrasal verbs, but a bit different, collocation. So a group of 2 or more words that usually go together. So again, this is a case of memorizing which verb goes with which noun, commonly, or which preposition is often followed or follows or is followed by a noun. So which words in speech follow these patterns to help you sound more natural. You want to use these collocations. Okay, so these kind of patterns. Okay, patterns of speech that we have in sentences. So let's look at a bunch of examples of very common, very useful collocations that I encourage you to memorize and practice using for your IELTS speaking test. Very, very, very useful, I think. Traveling or commuting by. Okay, so when we're talking about various methods of transportation, we tend to use by. So traveling by bus, traveling by train, by bicycle, okay, for example, by plane, by boat, whatever. So by. So not traveling with or traveling for the train or with the train. No, you'd say by the train. So it just sounds more natural, okay? Just makes it really clear to the examiner or other native speaker what you're saying, and they'll just go with the flow of your sentence if you have these collocations in place. So the example we have here, I commute from Ansan by bus every day. Or how did you travel there? I traveled by train. Okay, by. Pretty simple. So, and we also have in the brackets here, you can see, and we'll have this with each example, we have a single word verb that kind of avoids the preposition, but I encourage you to use these collocations. But you could also say, I take the bus, or I took the bus here. But it's very common to use these collocations with these prepositions, so I encourage you to use those. But we have these alternatives with the same meaning, but kind of avoiding the prepositions as well, which are a bit easier to use. I commute from Ansan by bus every day. You know, we have to enter, get on, and then sit, hopefully, inside that transportation. So sitting or getting on the bus. So get on is like boarding the bus here, board, is get on, okay? So stepping onto the bus, entering the carriage, entering the bus, get on. And then sitting is, you know, you're in your chair. You're in your seat on the bus, on the train, you're sitting down. So, for example, this might happen, hopefully not, but you could, I dropped my phone while I was getting on the bus. So I was stepping from the bus stop onto the bus. During that movement, I dropped my phone, is what we're saying here, okay? Picked it up, whatever. Later, we're on the bus, and on the bus, we were sitting next to a cute baby on the bus. Or we were sitting on the bus next to a cute baby. In this case, yeah, we kind of put the object in the middle here, sitting, blah, 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 on the bus. Okay, on the bus. So we board a bus or a train. If it's a bicycle or other thing that you're manually, like operating with your body, we might say mount, but it sounds weird. It sounds a bit unnatural. You would say get on your bicycle, get on your bike. Or get on the scooter, etc. Sounds much more natural than mount, okay? But mount is a single word verb that we have. Board as well, board a bit more formal, that you would hear from in some instructions perhaps. I dropped my phone while I was getting on the bus. We were sitting next to a cute baby on the bus. So those were buses, trains, planes. These bigger, many people methods of transportation or public transportation. But when it's smaller, when it's like a private car, private vehicle, so much smaller, we tend to use in. So sitting or getting in. So we don't say get on a car or get on a taxi. We say get inside the car or taxi. Or we're sitting in the car, sitting in the taxi, for example. It's a bit different. So we saw on before on, but now in, in, okay, in. So for example, we sat in the car for a while waiting for the rain to stop, inside, and she wasn't paying attention when she got in, so she didn't realize that the taxi driver was her uncle. We sat in the car for a while waiting for the rain to stop. So speaking, addressing, or listening to. Speak to or listen to. So speaking to someone, conversation, having a conversation, or listening to music. You can maybe say enjoying music, but these ones, we really don't have very good alternatives. You really do have to use speaking to and listening to, okay, with a to. So it sounds unnatural, it sounds a bit strange if you say, in this example, Ryan kept listening music. We just need that to there. It doesn't really, maybe doesn't feel like it's important, but it is to make you sound more natural. So Ryan kept listening to music even when I was trying to speak to him. So both of these two, he's so rude. Listening to music, speaking to. So it's just adding that word in there makes you sound much more natural. Ryan kept listening to music even when I was trying to speak to him. So seeking something, looking or searching for something. We really do commonly always say searching or looking, either for. Okay, look or search for. So not looking her coat, looking her bag, no, looking for her bag. Okay, really clearly tells us that they're searching and trying to find it, trying to find. Okay, so in this example, Kira is upstairs looking for her coat. Kira is upstairs looking for her coat. And another one with for. Okay, so we're seeing lots of different prepositions being used here, a couple with for now. So waiting for someone or something. So there is a verb await, okay? I'm awaiting this, I'm awaiting that. Again, it sounds very formal and strange. Like with the phrasal verbs, this one, it sounds very strange, kind of formal. We don't use it that often. Expecting someone, yeah, you can use that. I'm expecting someone, I'm expecting a delivery. So you're waiting at home for delivery. But in a conversation, very common just to say wait for instead. So waiting for, like this example, as a question, who are you waiting for? Well, I'm waiting for my boss to arrive. Okay, now we're going to see a couple of examples with at as the preposition. Looking at someone or something. So in a more formal way, we might say examine or study. But very commonly, conversation again, we're going to say looking at. So carefully reading something, carefully using your eyes to get the information about it or see the details. So for example, I'm looking at your CV, but I can't see any details about your qualifications. This word, a long word, big word. Qualifications, your resume, basically the points on your resume. So your degree, your high school diploma, professional qualifications that you have from studying or achieving different things, okay? Looking at your CV, your resume, okay, reading it carefully. I'm looking at your CV, but I can't see any details about your qualifications. Another one with at. Okay, we had look at, which is a bit more slower, casual. Staring at is like, ooh, very like this, very intense, okay? So inspecting or even scrutinize, this is a very formal word. If you look this word up, it's going to include meanings of like staring at something or looking very, very closely. Looking very closely, really paying a lot of attention, completely focused on something. Staring, not blinking like I'm doing, not blinking, just staring. It's a bit intense, a bit scary, not very nice. Or in this case, the example is a cute example, okay? So babies, right? Babies do this. Babies stare at things. They're watching and staring at things, okay? They look and they focus on things because their brains are learning. So in this example, the baby was staring at me, maybe on the bus. We saw a baby on the bus earlier. So the baby was staring at me, so I smiled back at her and wiggled my fingers. The baby was staring at me, so I smiled back at her and wiggled my fingers. Now we're going to see a bit more wider. You can apply some of these common verbs and then nouns that come after them. So the correct verb to use with these nouns, if you're doing something involving this noun or you're doing that activity, have, okay? So we use have with meals. So have dinner, breakfast, lunch. You can say eat dinner, eat breakfast, eat lunch. Eat food or have food, it's kind of the same. So it could be eat, you can use eat. But have dinner, we also have a drink, okay? So eat dinner, have a drink after, or have dinner and have a drink, okay? Have. And also have a rest. So people often say take a rest. You can say take a rest. Take a break, maybe. Take a break is very natural to say, but have a rest. So if you're gonna lie down or sleep or just close your eyes, that's a bit more natural to say have a rest. Did you have a good time last night? Okay, so have a time, have a good or bad time. Yeah, we had dinner, and some drinks at the pub. So we had dinner, and also saying we had drinks. So we don't need to repeat the verb. We could, but we don't have to. We had dinner and here had. Okay, but we're not repeating it. We don't need to. It's not necessary because it's the same verb for dinner and drinks. We had dinner and some drinks at the pub. Okay, that was have and now do. So again, doing stuff, okay, doing these activities that we have to. Do research, do laundry, chores or tasks, do work in general, or homework. So do research, do laundry, do work, do homework. Always do. Or do some exercise or an exercise. So these things we have with do very commonly. Very normal, natural sounding collocation that we use. On my days off, I catch up on all my chores, right? So my boring or manual kind of daily tasks, things you have to do. For example, doing laundry, doing my workouts, etc. Doing my homework, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you can have a whole list of things with do. Doing laundry, workouts, homework, etc. On my days off, I catch up on all my chores, like doing laundry, doing workouts, etc. And get, okay, so another very common one, get. One of these verbs, there's like hundreds, maybe, hundreds of ways that we use get, like all these different kind of collocations, phrases, phrasal verbs as well. But here, some simple ones that we can use in your IELTS speaking very easily and immediately. Getting a job, finding a job, okay? Finding a job, passing the interview and being offered the job, get a job. Great, I got a job. Or get married, okay? Get married to someone. Or you can just say, we got married. Okay, we got married last summer. Our wedding was last summer. We got married last summer. Get married, got married. Okay, and get angry. So we can also use emotions and feelings. Becoming, so getting angry, becoming excited. So that emotion starts. We've gone through a lot of different examples today, and I encourage you to try and memorize all of these. I chose them, I think, because they are all useful, right? You can use all of these in part 1, part 2, part 3 of the speaking test, and naturally in your English conversations, anyone you meet, any English class or conversation you have, you can use all of these phrases to just sound more natural and have a more relaxed, comfortable conversation for everyone, and not sound too formal or strange. You can just sound as natural as possible. Okay, so thank you. Well done for listening and well done for practicing really hard your speaking and listening carefully and taking notes, I hope. And good luck memorizing these and hope you can use them effectively in your speaking in the future and in your test. Okay, well done everyone. Thank you so much and we'll see you next time in lesson 3.